At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. I mean, in the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name is the Voice Ogre, and let's begin.
From the Office of Sub-Archivist Vim, Ministry of Honorable Conduct. Case File 66 Delta 9. Subject: The Gremlin Incident. Classified. Note: the following report has been compiled from official testimony, recovered security logs, and a full transcript of the subject statements. Its purpose is to provide a complete, unvarnished accounting of the events that led to 19 major operational failures, and the subsequent revision of Imperial Fleet maintenance procedure. The problem with capturing a human, Warlord Horg reflected as he stared at the pathetic specimen before him, was their disappointing fragility once you finally got them in chains. This one couldn't have been more than 20 local rotations old, barely past larval stage by Geared standards. With thin arms that probably couldn't lift a proper war axe, and a face that defaulted to an expression of mild boredom, as if being captured by the galaxy's most fearsome warrior race was somehow tedious. "Execute him," Horg bellowed from his command throne, gesturing dismissively at the human. "Airlock, plasma furnace, ceremonial disemboweling, I do not care which. Just make it quick. We have actual enemies to fight." Sub-Archivist Vim cleared his throat. It was a wet, deliberately prolonged sound that conveyed bureaucratic disapproval, professional superiority, and personal contempt all at once. His spindly fingers adjusted the ornate spectacles perched on his elongated snout as he consulted his data slate. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Warlord," Vim said in a nasal tone that would strip paint from hole plating. "According to Imperial Regulation 91 Delta, subsection 12, paragraph 38, any captured sentient must undergo a potential worthy adversary assessment before summary execution can be authorized." Horg's massive gray fist slammed onto his throne's armrest, causing several junior officers to flinch. "He's a janitor. Look at him. His capture manifest lists him as..." The Warlord squinted at his own data slate. "Sanitation and Nutritional Systems Technician. He was fixing a food dispenser when we boarded that freighter." "Nevertheless," Vim continued, his thin lips curling into a dry, bloodless smile, "the regulation is quite clear. And as this vessel's duly appointed procedural adjudicator, I must insist that we adhere to the correct procedure. Unless, of course, you would prefer that I file a non-compliance report with the Ministry of Honorable Conduct." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the recyclers and the quiet tap-tap-tap of someone's claw nervously drumming on a console. Every officer present knew what happened to commanders who earned this ministry's attention. The investigations alone could last years, and the paperwork was legendary in its ability to destroy careers more thoroughly than any plasma bombardment. "Fine," Horg growled through clenched tusks, "but make it quick." Vim's smile widened fractionally. "Oh, I assure you, Warlord, my presentation will be most illuminating." Warlord Horg's official testimony, recorded in his ready room, was predictably blunt. He glared at the recording drone hovering just off camera, his tusks catching the harsh light. "Shackled," he rumbled. "That is what we are. Shackled by regulation and procedure. In my grandfather's day, we would have spaced the human and been halfway to our next glorious battle by now." He leaned forward, his metals clinking. "But no. Now we have sub-archivists. We have procedural adjudicators. The Emperor created the ministry after the last Warlord's rebellion to keep us on leashes made of paperwork.
The greatest military force in the galaxy, brought to heel by ink sniffers who never held a weapon heavier than a stylus.
A pause. His eyes narrowed.
Vim particularly enjoys this, making me wait. He thinks I don't know about his little investigation. His theory about our recent setbacks. Ghost fleets, rival clans, solar flares. These are acceptable reasons for failure. But Vim?
The Warlord's laugh was bitter.
Vim thinks we're being brought low by something far more insulting.
Sub-Archivist Vim, speaking from his office for the official record, presented his case with prim satisfaction. He sat behind a desk so organized it could have been used as a measurement standard for right angles. Behind him, filing cabinets stretched to the ceiling, each drawer labeled with script so small and uniform it looked machine-etched.
"The warrior caste,"
he began, his nasal voice dripping condescension,
"has a remarkable capacity for self-deception. When the asteroid outpost Gargantua explosively decompressed, killing 300 warriors, the official report blamed honorable battle stress on the hull plating. When the third battle fleet was forced to retreat due to what I call the Great Foaming, the incident was attributed to hostile chemical warfare."
He adjusted his spectacles.
"No one wanted to examine the maintenance logs. No one wanted to notice the duty rosters for non-combat personnel. That sort of data is considered beneath a warrior's notice. That is why they failed to notice the pattern."
Vim pulled up a holo display showing a cascade of incident reports.
19 major disasters in the past solar year, all originating in areas of minimal security, all beginning with systems that fall under janitorial jurisdiction.
His thin fingers steepled.
"I have spent months correlating data, cross-referencing personnel movements with records from the Universal Maintenance Solutions, a human civilian contractor the Ministry of Supply outsourced its less honorable tasks to. I analyzed security footage no one else bothered to review because it only showed the cleaning staff. And I found him. One human, present at every single incident."
The display shifted to show a grainy security image of a young human male pushing a maintenance cart.
"The warriors blame enemy saboteurs or divine punishment. The truth is far more mundane."
Vim's features settled into a look of smug vindication.
"We are being systematically dismantled by a janitor."
The briefing room aboard the broadside of judgment had been designed to intimidate. Every surface was polished black stone carved from the jeered homeworld's sacred mountains, and the ceiling stretched high enough that voices echoed with appropriate menace. The senior staff filed in with the reluctant enthusiasm of students attending a mandatory lecture on proper form filing. Milo Burke was escorted by a warrior acolyte, Dern, whose enormous frame made the human look even smaller by comparison. Dern pushed Burke into a chair with perhaps more force than necessary, though the human barely seemed to notice. Instead, Burke's attention was fixed on a loose floor panel that squeaked when he shifted his weight. He prodded it experimentally with his foot.
"Must we have the prisoner present?"
Org demanded, settling his bulk into the command chair at the head of the table.
"This is already a waste of time without having to smell him."
Vim consulted his data slate with slow theatrical movements.
"Regulation 91 Delta explicitly requires the subject's presence, and I quote, so that they may face the glorious accounting of their deeds before their judgment is passed." It's quite a beautiful piece of bureaucratic poetry, really. Written after the Kentari incident, when we accidentally executed a prince we'd mistaken for a cabin boy.
"Get on with it."
Org snarled. Vim connected his data slate to the room's holoprojector with deliberate slowness, each gesture measured and unhurried. The lights dimmed. A title slide materialized in the air. Anomalous setbacks in the Orion Spur campaign. A preliminary analysis.
Gentlemen,
Vim began, his reedy voice filling the chamber.
what you are about to see may disturb you. It may challenge your preconceptions about the nature of warfare, honor, and the threats that we face. I ask only that you observe with open minds.
The title slide vanished. In its place appeared a grainy security image of Milo Burke's face, blown up to fill the entire holo display. He was mid-yawn, one hand partially covering his mouth. His expression one of profound disinterest. Beneath the image, its letters large enough to be read from orbit, was a single word. Suspect. The room erupted.
What is the meaning of this?
Roared Commander Grath, half rising from his seat.
Is this some kind of joke?
Demanded Tactical Officer Zarth.
That is the janitor!
Someone shouted from the back. Horg's tusks ground together audibly.
Vim, explain yourself, now.
Vim raised one finger for silence.
This,
He announced with the gravity of someone revealing the location of a hidden treasure fleet,
is the face of our enemy. This human, who I have codenamed the Gremlin, is personally responsible for every major operational failure that we have suffered in the past solar year.
Burke looked up from the squeaky floor panel. Sorry, wait, what?
Silence, prisoner.
Dern rumbled, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. He stared at the massive projection of Burke's face, with an expression of dawning confusion.
Let us begin.
Vim continued, switching to his next slide with the destruction of asteroid outpost Gargantua. In his cell, the human subject Milo Burke offered his own perspective to the recording drone. He sat on the narrow bunk, wrists still bearing the marks from the magnetic binders, and explained the matter with the patience of someone talking to a very slow child.
The toilets were backed up,
He said flatly.
not just one or two, the entire C-section laboratory complex. Now, on a human station, that is a health code violation. On a geared station, where they'd apparently installed sonic waste disintegrators at maximum power to prove how tough their shit was, well, that's about 3 weeks of accumulated fossilized waste, forming a plug harder than most pole plating.
He shrugged.
I tried the plunger. I tried the sonic bore. I even tried asking for proper equipment, but the quartermaster just laughed, so I did what any reasonable maintenance tech would do. I used a very small shaped charge. Percussive maintenance, we call it.
A pause.
How was I supposed to know that they'd routed the main sewage line directly adjacent to an unshielded high-pressure methane storage tank? Who does that? It's malicious architecture designed to make the station explode.
Burke rubbed his face.
I placed the charge, I heard the evacuation alarm, and I figured someone else has screwed up worse than me, and then I went to get my supervisor. But by the time I turn around, half the station was venting out into space, but, hey.
He offered a tired smile.
Toilets were unclogged.
Vim's presentation showed a technical schematic of Outpost Gargantua's internal structure. Red lines indicated sewage systems. Blue indicated volatile gas storage. The two lines ran parallel for nearly 300 meters, separated by a single wall of standard-grade metal that any maintenance charge could breach.
The official investigation,
Vim said, highlighting several sections of a report,
concluded that the explosive decompression was caused, and I quote, by catastrophic mechanical failure due to accumulated stress of honorable battle. The investigator, Commander Thok, is with us today.
Every head turned to look at Thok, who had suddenly become very interested in studying his data slate.
However,
Vim continued,
My analysis of the maintenance logs show that 3 hours before the incident, one Milo Burke, sanitation specialist 3rd class, requisitioned one low-yield percussive maintenance charge from Storage Bay 9. Security footage shows him entering C-section at 0800 hours and leaving at 0832 hours. The explosion occurred at 0833.
On the holo display, security footage played showing Burke walking calmly down a corridor, tool bag over his shoulder, whistling something tuneless. Behind him, through a viewport, the asteroid station tore itself apart in a spectacular cascade of venting atmosphere and secondary explosions.
300 honored warriors.
Vim intoned solemnly.
Killed by a clogged toilet and a design flaw that a first-year engineering student should have caught.
Horg's knuckles had gone white where he gripped his chair.
Continue.
The next slide materialized with ominous finality. The great foaming of the 3rd Battle Fleet. Vim played footage that would haunt the nightmares of every jeered officer present. Proud warships, 66 vessels of the line, were shown floundering in space. Their ports and windows obscured by rapidly expanding white substance that seemed to pour from every emergency vent and maintenance hatch. The foam hardened on contact with the vacuum of space, turning the fearsome battle fleet into a collection of abstract sculptures.
The official cause, Vim noted, was listed as a spontaneous battle chemical reaction, possibly a human weapon. The fleet was forced to retreat, spending 3 weeks in dock having their hulls scraped clean. The humiliation was considerable.
He switched to a molecular analysis.
The foam itself was our standard fire suppressant, water-based, protein-rich, designed to expand rapidly. Harmless under normal circumstances. However, when combined with this...
A new molecular structure appeared.
Highly reactive plasma coolant commonly used in our energy weapon systems, it creates a compound that expands exponentially when exposed to vacuum. The contamination was so uniform across the entire fleet's fire suppression reserves that it had to have been introduced at a supply depot.
The transcript from Burke's cell recording continues.
The buffer is making this awful grinding noise, huh?
Burke explained, gesturing with his hands.
You know the sound. Metal on metal, like fingernails on a chalkboard if the chalkboard was made of suffering. The cargo bay supervisor told me to fix it or stop using it, and since I had to use it unless I wanted to buff 30,000 square meters of tech plating by hand,
he trailed off.
I found this drum in storage. It's a big thing, industrial size. Label has mostly worn off, but I could make out purpose solve something. It's close enough to purpose solving, right? And it had the right viscosity. Didn't smell great, but, you know, what does on a cheered ship?
Burke leaned back.
I refilled the buffer's reservoir and it worked perfectly. It ran without a sound. I was so proud I did the entire cargo hold. Every deck plate, every wall panel. I even went over to the supply crates and I made them look nice for loading. The quartermaster actually complimented my initiative.
A long pause.
Turns out that the drum contained concentrated plasma coolant, and when you aerosolize plasma coolant and let it settle as a fine film on military surplus fire suppressant canisters, and then those canisters get distributed to an entire battle fleet,
he shrugged.
Well, you get a lot of foam. Lots and lots and lots of foam.
The briefing room had gone completely silent. Several officers were staring at Burke with expressions that ranged from horror to a kind of stunned respect. Dern, the young guard, had taken several unconscious steps back from this prisoner.
"Shall I continue?"
Vim asked, clearly enjoying himself.
There is more?
Horg's voice had lost much of its bluster.
"Oh yes, so much more."
Vim switched slides.
The spontaneous disassembly of Warlord Torg's honor mech during a sacred duel with Commander Drock. A most embarrassing incident, I'm sure you will recall.
The footage was already legendary amongst the jeered. Torg, Horg's chief rival, strode onto the ceremonial combat grounds in his ancestral battle mech. The mech took 3 steps forward, raised its plasma blade in salute, and then its left leg simply ceased to be a leg. The ankle joint separated, the knee buckled, and 4 tons of War Machine crashed face first into the arena floor with a sound like a dropped bag of kitchenware.
The investigation found that a single load-bearing pin in the primary ankle actuator had been replaced by decorative zinc. Zinc, a metal so soft you could carve it with a dining utensil. But who would do such a thing? And more importantly, how?
Vim pulled up the duty rosters.
Milo Burke, assigned to Waste Receptacle Sanitation in Mech Bay 4. 4 hours before the duel. Security footage shows him entering with his maintenance cart and leaving 20 minutes later. The original plan was never recovered.
Warrior Acolyte Dern's testimony was recorded in his private quarters. He sat uncomfortably in a chair too small for his bulk, his tusks still coming in crooked, giving him a perpetual expression of confused concern.
My brother was in the 3rd Fleet,
He said quietly.
Lost to the Great Foam, we said. It sounded better than suffocated in fire suppressant because someone mixed the wrong chemicals. It's more honorable.
He shifted, the chair creaking.
When they brought the human aboard, I thought, finally, there's something I can do right. Guard one scrawny human. He looked so harmless. Kept asking where the coffee machine was and something about a phone call.
A long pause.
Now they're saying that he's this saboteur? But he fixed the temperature control in my quarters yesterday. I was escorting him, heard my complaint to another guard, and fixed it with a piece of wire and some sealant. Didn't even ask for anything. Just muttered something about substandard HVAC maintenance and went back into his cell.
Dern looked directly at the recording drone.
I don't understand. If he is this dangerous enemy, why did he fix my heating?
Vim had moved on to what he clearly considered his masterpiece. The slide read, "The Unscheduled FTL Jump of the IDS Unseen Shadow."
Our most advanced stealth vessel,
he intoned with appropriate gravity.
Crew of 800, pride of the 5th Fleet, disappeared without a trace. The only transmission received was this.
He played an audio file. A cheerful, repetitive human tune filled the briefing room.
And the only internal footage recovered from the vessel's emergency beacon.
The holo display showed the bridge of the unseen shadow. Everything appeared normal except for one detail. Milo Burke knelt beside the captain's chair. He hummed that same cheerful tune and carefully rewired the entire navigation console with a pocket multi-tool.
Timestamp analysis shows this was recorded 11 minutes before the ship's unscheduled FTL jumped to coordinates that, as far as our stellar cartographers can determine, are somewhere in the starless gulf between galaxies. The ship has never been recovered.
From Burke's continued testimony.
"Oh, the captain's beverage warmer kept flickering,"
Burke said, as if this explained everything.
"Oh, it's barbaric. The captain was clearly distressed. He kept hitting it and swearing. The problem was obvious. So they'd routed the warmer's power through the same circuit as the navigation console's auxiliary systems. Every time that the warmer cycled on, it created a power fluctuation that affected the nav console."
Burke scratched his head.
"So I rerouted it. I isolated the warmer on its own circuit. I added a voltage regulator I made from some spare parts, and I stabilized the whole system. Warmer worked perfectly. Look, after the first time a job goes sideways, you get cautious. But with their tech, caution's useless. One can either do the job right and hope the system holds, or leave it broken and know that we will fail. So I chose to do my job."
He paused, frowning.
"I did notice the nav console made some unusual noise when I finished, but the bridge crew didn't seem concerned." They was all excited about a drill or something, so I packed up my tools and I left. The warmer's fixed.
A moment of reflection.
I wonder if they're okay out there. Space is pretty big.
The briefing room erupted in chaos. Officers shouted over each other, some demanding Burke's immediate execution, others insisting on a full investigation. Horg rose from his chair, his massive frame trembling with rage.
Silence!
The room obeyed.
This cannot be real.
Horg said, his voice low and dangerous.
You are telling me that one human maintenance worker has accidentally destroyed more jailed military vessels than the entire enemy fleets?
The evidence is incontrovertible,
Vim replied primly.
Though I should note, my investigation suggests the human's actions were without hostile intent. He just appears to be aggressively competent at his job, while our systems are aggressively incompetent at existing.
That is worse!
Horg bellowed.
That is so much worse! This...
Embarrassing?
Burke supplied helpfully from his chair. Every jeered in the room turned to stare at him. Burke had worked a metal fastening loose from the back of his chair, and was absently bending it back and forth.
I mean, that's what this is, right? Your ships keep breaking because they're badly designed. And so instead of fixing problems, you just blame enemy action because that sounds better in the reports.
The metal fastening snapped. Burke looked at the two pieces with mild interest.
Like this chair,
he continued, standing up.
Who uses magnetic binders with the manual override located where the prisoner can reach it?
He touched the two pieces of the metal to specific points on his binders. They hissed open and fell to the floor with a clang.
Now that is just sloppy.
For a moment, nobody moved. And then everyone moved at once. Burke lunged forward, snatched Vim's data slate controller from the lectern, and his fingers jabbed at the screen. Dern reached for him, but froze when Burke held up one finger in a wait gesture.
So, see, here's your problem,
Burke said conversationally, pulling up the briefing room's technical specifications on the holo display.
So, your fire suppression system's routed through the same control node as your holo projector. So if someone were to, say, overclock the projector's power output while simultaneously locking the door and disabling the local room alert, I mean...
He made a few more adjustments on the controller. The holo projector emitted a high-pitched whine.
Well, it creates a feedback loop that tricks the fire suppression system into registering a massive thermal event.
The projector exploded in a shower of sparks. Immediately, every vent in the ceiling burst open, flooding the room with rapidly expanding foam. Within seconds, officers cursed, slipped, and collided with each other in the white chaos. From Warrior Acolyte Dern's post-incident briefing, he looked embarrassed, his young features scrunched in a mixture of shame and admiration.
Commander Garth slipped in the foam,
he said quietly.
He went down hard. His dignity was compromised. A warrior's duty is to aid his superiors in distress.
He paused, choosing his words carefully.
I focused on my duty to help the commander maintain his honor, and I failed to notice the prisoner move past me. These things can happen in the chaos of, foam.
Another pause.
In all the confusion, I thought I saw him nod at me as he left. Just a silhouette in the foam for a second, like he had something else to fix. And maybe he did.
The emergency lighting in Escape Pod Bay 3 cast everything in harsh red shadows. Burke moved with the economy of motion that suggested he had already memorized the ship's service conduit schematics. He slipped out of a maintenance hatch behind a row of emergency supply lockers. The escape pod's hatch stood open, its interior cramped but functional. Burke paused at the threshold, then turned back to the small maintenance panel beside the door. He pulled out his multi-tool one more time. 3 minutes later, the pod ejected into space as the broadside of Judgment's artificial gravity experienced a mysterious fluctuation that sent every unsecured object in the ship sliding toward the stern. It would take them 6 hours to fix it. The following is a transcript from the recovered black box of Escape Pod E3. Burke sat in the pilot's chair, the starless expanse visible through the small viewport. He found the emergency rations and examined them, his face a mask of weary disgust.
Protein paste,
he said, showing the tube to the pod's internal log camera.
It's labeled victory flavor, which tastes exactly like you'd expect abstract concepts to taste. A 4 out of 10, but only because I'm grading on a curve that includes tiered coffee.
He leaned back.
I do feel bad about the people who died. I do. But every one of those disasters was an accident engineered into the design, you know? I was just the guy who happened to be fixing the toaster next to it. The real fault lies with whoever designed a bomb and called it a space station. I mean, who puts a sewage line next to a methane tank? Who labels plasma coolant as a cleaning solvent? Who builds a nav console that shares power with a beverage warmer?
Burke shook his head.
The Gerb want to be this big, scary warrior race, but they can't even maintain their own equipment. They'd rather blame sabotage and admit they need better engineering standards. Oh, no, that's someone else's problem to fix.
He paused, considering.
Well, not anymore.
The pod's emergency beacon blinked steadily. Burke settled in to wait. His gaze fell on a loose panel near the environmental controls that would definitely rattle once they hit FTL.
I'll fix it later,
he decided, closing his eyes.
After a nap.
Addendum 1. 3 weeks post-incident. Mess hall. IDS broadside of judgment. The dining hall buzzed with the usual dinner crowd. At one corner table, warrior acolyte Dern held court with a group of younger soldiers, his voice carrying over the din.
And then,
Dern said,
the gremlin looked upon the great war fleet, and he spoke but one word. Inadequate. And with nothing but a cleaning cloth and a container of mislabeled chemicals, he brought low our mightiest vessels.
His audience leaned forward, captivated.
They say that he wanders the stars.
Dern continued, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper.
In search of poor maintenance. Some claim that if you listen carefully in the maintenance shafts at night, you can hear him humming that cursed human tune. The one that summons mechanical failure.
What happened to him?
A young private asked. Dern leaned back, his expression grave.
He escaped, of course. Turned our own fire suppression system against us. But he left us a message, carved into the escape pod bay's maintenance panel with this sacred multi-tool.
And what did it say?
Dern paused for effect.
Your warranty is void.
The table erupted in nervous chatter. Across the mess hall, Warlord Horg stood before a malfunctioning food dispenser and bellowed at a maintenance crew.
3 weeks!
Horg roared.
Billions for a new plasma cannons, and we can't get a dispenser that doesn't spew protein paste like a wounded crux. What kind of worthless...
The dispenser suddenly activated and sprayed him with lukewarm protein slurry. In the corner, the young warriors fell silent. Then one whispered,
The gremlin's curse.
Addendum 2. Sub-Archivist Vim's concluding remarks for the official record. Vim sat at his perfectly organized desk, his thin fingers steepled. Before him, a new filing cabinet had been added, labeled The Gremlin Incident, classified.
The military high command has officially classified the entire affair,
he said with obvious pleasure.
The official story is that we captured and executed a human spy. Warlord Horg received a commendation.
He adjusted his spectacles.
Unofficially, new maintenance procedures have been implemented fleet-wide. Sewage systems must now be separated from volatile storage.
all chemical containers must be properly labeled. It's everything I have been recommending for years. The warriors see my regulations as chains. They fail to understand that these regulations are the only things that keep this ship from tearing itself apart.
Vim pulled up a new file on his data slate.
Now, I have also investigated reports of similar incidents in other sectors. The Kentari Alliance lost a dreadnought when someone cross-wired their water recycler with their shield generators. The Mercan hegemony's throne would suffer a planet-wide blackout after a janitor tried to fix a flickering light.
He looked directly at the recording drone.
The humans, they have a saying, never attribute to malice what can adequately be explained by stupidity. Now, I prefer never attribute to enemy action what can be adequately explained by poor maintenance.
His data slate chimed. Another incident report. Vim smiled his thin smile.
Job security,
he murmured.
The gremlin may be gone, but his legacy of exposed incompetence will keep me busy for years.
Addendum 3. Recovered human comms intercept post-rescue of subject Milo Burke. Source: Deep-range listening post 9. The camera frame was cleaner. In the background, the hum of human technology. Burke sat in a break room, then held a ceramic mug that steamed with real coffee. He took a sip, his expression showing that he'd finally found civilization.
So I've had a thought,
He said to someone off camera.
The Jird are a self-correcting problem. Their entire military infrastructure is held together with pride and aggressive denial about basic engineering principles.
He took another sip.
So I wrote up a report for command. 52 pages. The plasma coolant storage alone should be classified as a war crime against physics. Well, their real vulnerability lies deeper than military strategy. It's a philosophical flaw.
Someone off camera asked a question.
Go back?
Burke laughed.
Why would I go back? They got Vim now. He'll either fix their problems or document their collapse in exquisite detail. Either way, it's their department now.
He stood and stretched.
Besides, I got a new assignment. The PSS Adequate needs a complete overhaul of its waste management system. Works far from glorious, but at least the Milonquins label their chemicals correctly.
Burke walked toward the door, then paused.
Oh, and if anyone asks about the Jird, tell them their biggest threat comes from their own maintenance backlog. Oh, that and whoever designed their sewage system should be tried for crimes against sapient life.
The door hissed shut. On his table, his coffee mug sat empty except for a note written on a napkin. Heating element in coffee machine needs replacing. Fixed temporarily with bypass circuit. Should hold for about 3 weeks. MB. Epilogue. 6 months later. The Jird Inner Council war room was a testament to martial glory. The walls displayed 10,000 years of victories. The ceiling bore a map of their conquered territories. Here, the heating system failed 6 hours ago.
Can someone explain?
Growled High Warlord Kragath, Supreme Commander of all Jird forces.
Why the most secure facility in the Empire is currently colder than a gulf between stars?
The maintenance crew investigates,
replied his aide through chattering teeth.
They believe that it may be connected to the new coffee machine installation in the auxiliary break room.
Coffee machine?
Kragath's bellow could have shattered glass.
Who authorized a coffee machine in a military command center?
You did, sir. Last week, he said, and I quote, "If the humans can maintain discipline while consuming caffeinated bean water, then so can we."
There was a long pause. Then, from somewhere in the walls came a ping, followed by a rattle. The heating sputtered back to life.
"Sir,"
the aide said quietly,
"perhaps we should hire a human consultant for our maintenance division."
High Warlord Kragath considered this. Finally, he spoke.
Draft the request, but classify it as beyond top secret. If word gets out there that the Jird Empire needs human help to fix our heating systems,
He left the sentence unfinished. They all understood. Some defeats were military, others were diplomatic, and some were just embarrassing. In the depths of space, aboard the PSS Adequate, Milo Burke sneezed. He chalked it up to dust from the ventilation system he repaired and returned to work. Somewhere in the universe, toilets needed service, beverage warmers needed repairs, and maintenance tickets needed closing. The work was mundane, inglorious, and essential. And that, Burke reflected as he tightened another valve, was the only thing that mattered. After all, someone had to maintain the universe.